Good day and greetings from the Great White North. My name is Prickly Poo and welcome to day 156 of a year of change. Where today we are going to talk about something that we touched on a while ago. Didn't really expand on it a whole lot, but I was going to try to get a nice segue into that, but it failed. Sorry. Basically, a long time ago, spitting on myself already. A long time ago, we had just sort of talked about vegetables and picky eaters and stuff like that. And a lot of the time I'll bring up things like childhood obesity. Because I've talked about it before that we generally start out as fat kids. We don't often just all of a sudden start being fat at 40. Our lifestyle doesn't change that drastically. And part of it was, as well, it was just, I think it was something that was said in passing, sort of, you have to get your kids to eat the vegetables and the fruits and everything else. And, I mean, when we're making our choices for the food that we're eating, there's not a lot that we can do. I mean, we're the ones that are going out. We're the ones that are buying it. We're the ones that are saying, good enough, I'm going to just buy cakes and cookies and chips and everything else. But when it comes to kids, it's what we're buying and feeding them that's making them fat. So it's one of those things, it's much easier said than done, which covers pretty much everything, except maybe talking. But when you have part of the problem is that kids tend to be picky eaters. Not necessarily picky, just when it comes to fruits and vegetables and stuff like that. No kid likes them. None of us liked them when we were kids. Most kids now don't like them. But there are a number of different reasons for that, and it may not be just the fact that your kid is picky. And I know this is a weird topic to bring up because a lot of you are going, you don't have kids, what can you possibly tell me? This isn't a matter of, here's how to raise your kids. This isn't a matter of, here's what you need to do to make sure that your kid doesn't turn out fat. This is just information. So I'm putting it out there. So when we're kids, when we're younger, I mean, we all know that there's something that we hated when we were a kid that, we'll at the very least tolerate now. May not be our favorite food, but it's something that, we've tried again, and it's turned out it's not as bad as we remember, because your taste buds do change. We've talked about that before, that every couple of years trying something new. And it is a fairly drastic change. Kids have anywhere between 2 and 5 times as many taste buds as we do. So when they're turning their nose up at something, it may not necessarily be that they're just picky. If they've never tried it, then yes, that's probably what it is. But part of it as well is that everything that they taste is very, very, very intense when it comes to flavor. Something that you might taste and think, this is really bland. I mean, they can taste everything in there. This is a very broad generalization, by the way. There's also sort of a theory that a lot of the receptors that they have on their tongue, they do focus a lot more on bitter food. And they might just be that because they taste everything so intensely that bitterness comes out a lot easier than it does with us. But also with adults, I mean, something as simple as dark chocolate as compared to milk chocolate, there's a huge difference there. So they'll taste that as being much, much more bitter than we would. So the majority of the time when they're eating something like a vegetable, they're getting that bitter flavor along with it. It's not just a simple fact of saying, well, it doesn't taste like candy, so I don't like it. So there is that to sort of take into consideration. The problem is that one way or the other, they still need to get their vegetables into them. And, I mean, fruit is not as big a deal, I don't think, because the majority of the fruit that you can find out there, it's very sweet anyway. And unless it's something like a texture thing or it's because it's too sour, you probably don't have too much of a hard time getting them to eat that. It's the vegetable portion of it that we're really talking about. But the problem is that everyone seems to pick the same ones. And you would think that after, 100 years of people just constantly saying, oh, my kids hate their broccoli. Well, stop buying broccoli. You don't need to give them broccoli or Brussels sprouts or cauliflower or any of the shitty ones. So when you're looking at it, I mean, just like we were doing when we first started out, because when you're starting on your own with something like this, it's fairly easy to get your husband or your wife or your boyfriend or your girlfriend or whoever to follow along with you because they want to support you. A lot of the times, that we have the same eating habits that they do. So when you're starting out, it's fairly easy to sort of get them on board. But with kids, it's a little different because you pretty much have to force them because of what you're buying. So part of that is, you're constantly buying the stuff that you normally do anyway for them. And just trying to slowly wean them off that is going to be a little bit more difficult because they aren't going to be as willing. But there are certain things that we should be doing. Number one, don't buy the shitty vegetables. Brussels sprouts, broccoli, cauliflower. I mean, you might like them, but your kids probably don't. I mean, it's very rare. I've never liked Brussels sprouts. I've never been able to acquire a taste for them. I know some people that right from the time they were little kids just absolutely love them. Those people are weird. We know this. But they do exist. They are out there. So, I mean, there are places that you can go online and it says, oh, well, here's how to get your kids to eat their vegetables. But some of the recipes are really, really weird. They're bringing up things like asparagus and stuffed mushrooms and everything else and how to change it so that they'll eat the stuff like that. It's like fresh mushrooms are a horrible thing when you're a kid. They're just across the board. Most kids don't like them. So when you're trying to get them to do stuff like to eat their vegetables and, start eating more of it, think back to when we first started where anything is better than nothing. So it's fine to sort of mix the good and the bad when you're trying to get them to do this. Get the simple things. Baby carrots. They're very sweet. Most people like them. You can, I've never had glazed carrots with whatever you glaze them with. I assume honey or sugar or something, or brown sugar. That's something that you can try to look at. At least they're getting something. The sugar is going to cancel a lot of it out, but it's not going to leach away the nutrients, and it's going to be better than having to fight with them over it's steamed broccoli. Celery sticks. Stuff like that. Give them a dip. Something like... I know this sounds really, really patronizing. I'm not trying to be that way. Or patronizing? However you pronounce it. And it's not that. It's just the fact that when you're trying to think of it, you think, yes, I want it to be healthy and things like that. But, unfortunately, reality doesn't work that way. You're not going to be able just to say, well, here's some steamed carrots and some raw celery sticks. Go to her. If you can, then great. But in general, they're not going to go after it. You do need to mix some stuff in there. So if they don't have a peanut allergy, peanut butter and celery is generally, sort of a go-to. Or Cheese Whiz and celery. Put that inside it if they eat that. It's not great for them, but it's better than them having a grilled cheese sandwich, if you think of it that way. Same thing with the carrots. It's better for them to have, brown sugar glazed carrots, which sound really good now, as opposed to something with just sugar in it. So little things like this, it's going to be a little difficult if you're making a separate thing, but sort of mix them in, gradually bring back the sugar amount or whatever you want to do. But when you're trying to get them to start in on this, think about where we were 5 months ago. When you're looking back going, I'm not touching any vegetable, it doesn't matter. But you experimented, you tried a whole bunch of different ones. You went out and thought, okay, this one looks like it might be something I can try. We'll do this. And some of them have been successful. Some of them have been failures. But you found something in there that you can say, good enough, I'm going to try this. And many of you probably have done the same thing with them anyway. So this might be a moot point to sort of talk about this. But when you're looking at stuff like that, our taste buds are not going to be the same as kids. We know the majority of kids could live off of candy and cake and everything else, and they would be perfectly happy. But also keep in mind that although they do need some of it, it's not going to be the same as us because we aren't. We can sort of force ourselves to say, good enough, you know what? I know I don't like this, but I'm going to have to eat this because it's better for me, and eventually, the payoff is going to be greater than suffering through having to eat shitty broccoli. But they simply don't have that thought process. So, anyway, there are a number of different things that you can do. I actually found one spot that was sort of helpful. I'm going to put a link in the description below for the Mayo Clinic. It got away from some of the other weird stuff that's out there. There are a ton of other websites you can go to. If you just type in, kids and vegetables, where it'll say, oh, we'll try this and this and this. And some of them are really out there. They had something with mint and asparagus. So they're really, really odd combinations. I mean, I'm sure that they taste fine, but let's face it, you're not going to go through that entire trouble to try them out on asparagus first. Try them out on simple things. Like corn is not great. There's really nothing in there, but again, better than nothing. Celery, carrots, potatoes, like just sweet potatoes. There you go. There's another one. Just try to sort of find some things, just the very basics, ones that ideally that you would look at and say, okay, these are probably the best of a bad situation, and see where they can go from here, and find out what they do like and what they won't like. And I was going to say what they won't eat, but what they do like and what they don't like and things like that. But just sort of keep in mind that they're tasting things much more differently than you are. They may not need salt on it because the flavor on it is so intense. They may not need to have a bunch of different oils and seasonings and stuff like that, because they're going to be getting just the raw flavor of it. That might be part of the problem as well. I mean, if you are feeding them, we're going to go back to broccoli because it's sort of the yeah, that's the right thing. I was going to say standalone, and then I tried to say something else and came out standalone again. We'll pick broccoli because it seems to be the... What's the term I'm looking for? Quintessential? Here we go. The quintessential bad vegetable that kids hate. Anyway, we'll just do that. And generally you'll see like someone will put cheese all over it and they'll try to eat that. Whatever it's going to take, it's still better than them not having anything. And let's face it, with a broccoli, just do the florets. Don't do the stalks, because those, even as an adult, they're like, I kind of should eat them because I bought the whole thing. But if you can just do the florets, then you're fine. Baby carrots is another thing. Peas or edamame for something a little bit different. But don't try to go too exotic too soon. If you find that they do like that, like if they enjoy the sweetness of like red pepper or orange or yellow peppers, those sort of things, then fine. Throw those in there as well. Experiment with a bunch of different things, and eventually you will find something that they may not say this is the best food in the world, but they're much more inclined to eat that than they are to just sort of turn their nose up at it and not eat anything at all. But, sort of went off topic there. Yes, there's a description from the Mayo Clinic, or a link in the description from the Mayo Clinic. I'll put that in there. It seems a bit more practical as opposed to the asparagus and stuffed mushrooms and roasted Brussels sprouts and everything else that they did for some of the other ones. They all seem to pick the worst vegetables in the world to start out with. Start with the basics. Start with stuff like celery, carrots, peas, corn, just the basic stuff. And see where you can go from there. Cucumber. There you go. I don't know many people who don't. I know one person who doesn't like cucumber. But it's a texture thing. It's not a matter of flavor, because it doesn't really have a strong flavor to us. But try those things. Anyway, but just keep in mind that what you're getting from it, you might think it's very, very bland. It could be a very, very intense flavor for them. And that might be part of the reason why they turn their nose up at it so much, because there are a lot of bitter pieces to vegetables. And I mean, there's a theory that that's sort of an evolutionary thing, that it protects them from eating too many things that are bitter because they're poisonous. And when they're growing up and they're putting everything in their mouth, eventually they'll just spit it out because they taste everything so strongly. But just sort of keep it in mind that if you're buying something and you think, oh, I kind of like this because it's a little bit sour and there's that bitter sweet to it, chances are the bitter is going to override the sweet to it. So that's why things like carrots and celery, they're, to us, they're a little bit bland, but they're more, I was going to say sugary, they're more sweet-ishness, fullness, is something that they might be able to try. Or be more willing to try. It's probably a better way to put it. Anyway, this might be very bad advice. I don't think it is. But, I mean, you can't force them to eat it. You're not going to hold them down and shove carrots down their throat or anything like that. But you can make it so that it's easier for them. It's much easier for you, so you're not battling with them all the time. And as long as you can sort of find that middle ground where you can say, no, it's not great. It's not the best for them to have, vegetables that are, you don't obviously have to be drowning in brown sugar. But having that little coating of brown sugar, if it's going to get them to eat it, the nutrients that they're going to be getting from it are much, much better than them simply not having them at all. Because they do need them. Like I say, I was going to address this with fruit as well, but there are so many things out there with fruit that, they're very, very sweet anyway. So not a lot of you probably have a hard time getting your kids to eat them. But it does apply for that as well. Try them out with, if they like sour candies, then try the frozen grapes thing that we did. If they like really, 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 really sweet stuff, there's fruit out there you can get, really sweet apples or, something like that. Something that's going to, kiwi is sort of another soury, sweety thing. But try to sort of find stuff that's going to match their tastes. And it's going to make things much, much easier in the long run. Not just for them, but for you. You may not be able to eat the same glazed carrots, but at least you're going to be able to start making a change for the better all the way around. And if your husband or wife or boyfriend or girlfriend or whoever is, not exactly sort of stepping in line with what you're trying to do, make them cook it. There you go. Just say, good enough. You can cook these glazed vegetables. I will have my regular ones. And then, at least that way, they'll say, well, I can have these, and the kids will have these, and you can have your own stuff. But if you're one of those people that even as an adult, you haven't been able to find anything as of yet, even though it's been a few months and we should be having our fruits and vegetables and everything else, again, something's better than nothing. So every little bit helps. So if you have to do that yourself, which you probably already are, go to it. Anyway. That's it. I will put everything down in the description. Well, the one thing down in the description below so that you can take a look at it. There are a myriad of other places that you can go. They aren't really health conscious. They're more along the lines of like fashion magazine sort of, oh, well, here's how to get kids to eat things. So you can go find those on your own because they're everywhere. But as far as the Mayo Clinic one, I'll put that one in there just to sort of get things started, and it might be a good starting point for you. I said starting twice. 3 times. Anyway, right now though, thank you very much for watching this video. If you liked it, please poke the like button for me. In the meantime, keep yourself warm and fuzzy, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.